So there are a few different ways of getting your peas, your broad beans and your runner beans going. You could just plant them in the ground, straight in. You could start them off inside in a bag in some moist compost. Or you could start them off by giving them a soaking just in a cup of water. So what I'm going to show you is just a quick soaking method. So you can see here it's already set up, but I'll just quickly demonstrate again. So I've got myself an empty jug. What I've got here is the kettle. It's still hot, not boiling hot, so I don't hurt myself when I'm pouring, but I'm just going to pour out about 100 ml in there. See, just enough to cover the beans. So all I then do is just place, I'm going to put 4 in for now on that one. Now I'll do the same with the runner beans. So these are already quite swollen. Sometimes you'll find they're a little bit more shriveled depending on the age of the seed or the drying process. If you dried them at home, you might have a bit more shriveled. So I'll just put them in. And if you have a look at the broad beans, they're a little bit more shriveled. This one's in fact even cracked, but I'll put it in and see what happens. So I'll put them in. Now if I just leave them for a couple of hours, I'll notice they'll start swelling up. So if you weren't fortunate to have some seed at home, but you might have had some dried peas in the cupboard, then you can see the difference in size of these dried peas compared to the peas that I bought here. You know, alderman ones are quite large. These peas are quite small. But what I can tell you is they do sprout. I'll show you a picture that I've been sprouting some on the windowsill just to check for you. So if I put, let's just chuck the whole handful in. If I put the whole handful in, obviously people like peas, so I can share those plants around as they grow. Similar to the soaking method, where we put things in water. All this is day 0. We fill a container with water, cold or warm. We're just going to use runner beans for this example, and I'll use some dried peas. You put the runner beans into the water, you put the peas into the water, you put a lid on, and you have a way in which that lid can breathe. I'm just going to put a bit of wadding in there to stop bugs and stuff getting in, but to allow air flow between it. And in a way, I've just created myself a simple sprouting chamber. So the water's in there in the first 24 hours to 48 hours just to absorb into the seed. Then what we would do is empty that water out, leave the seeds in there, give it a rinse of fresh water, empty that water out just so there's enough moisture around the outside of the container. And I would do that every day until I start seeing the seeds sprout in 7 to 10 days. Then I would continue doing that for a little bit longer until I've got a little bit more of leafy growth on the plants. And then what I would be doing would be taking those plants out and planting them directly into the soil. So that's just sprouting your seeds as if you were sprouting them to eat. I'm sprouting them to grow. So another method of starting your peas, your runner beans or your broad beans inside is using a damp soil method or a damp media. So it doesn't have to be compost or coconut fibre. It could be tissue, it could be screwed up tissue, or even cotton wool if that's all you have about. Even stuffing from pillows, anything that can hold a bit of moisture around that seed will work well. But what you would need is a container to do this in. What you'll need is something that can hold liquid, be sealed up but still allow a little bit of air in and out. So what I suggest is something like a freezer bag. This is a freezer bag with handles. You can also get freezer bags with a zip tie. So it doesn't particularly matter which one, except for the one with handles. Obviously when you tie it up, if you tip it or turn it and there's any liquid inside, it could leak out. But I like the idea because you don't seal it so tight that air can't flow in and out. You don't mind it building up a bit of carbon dioxide in there and being a bit raw air in there. But what you don't want is it to stay like that for a long time. With the Ziplocs, you might seal it all the way up. But sometimes what I do before I seal it at the ends, I get myself a little bit of fibre, maybe it's a bit of wadding from a pillow, and I'll just seal it up to that anyway, just to make sure a little bit of airflow goes in. Some people would seal it the whole way up, but I like to make sure there's still a little bit of chance for airflow. So I'm just going to demonstrate how to do the peas and the beans in this. So I'm going to fill up a bit of compost. This is already moist, but if it wasn't moist, I'd want to add some water. So I'm going to fill up a little bit of compost in the bottom, just enough to bed the peas on. So if it was a bit dry, I would just add a little bit of water in, either with a sprinkler or just dribble it in. I don't want to soak it. I don't want to be able to squeeze it and have loads of water coming off, but I want to be able to squeeze it and it just hold together a little bit. So in this, we're going to put some of our peas. For this experiment, we're going to use our dried peas from the cupboard, the Leo's dried peas. The reason I like the dried peas from the cupboard is that box is a lot cheaper than a packet of seeds, and you get about 5 times as many in there. So I'm just going to place a pea in different spots over it. Doesn't have to be particularly accurate. I'm not going to go overboard because I don't need to grow all these peas, but I will be giving away my spares to different people growing. So I've got my peas in there. Now I'm just going to put a little bit more compost on top. I'll seal it up and I'll keep it like that, indoors, somewhere warm, not too hot that it bakes in there, but somewhere warm, and I'll leave it in there for 7 to 10 days. I'll keep checking on it. If it looks like it's drying out a little bit, I might just give it a little bit of extra water every day or so. Not soaking wet, just damp, just to encourage those seeds to absorb the moisture and start sprouting the roots and the shoots, and move on. The other good reason about freezer bags is that you can write the date and the contents on there. So I'm going to go ahead and label them. Obviously it's easier to label them before you put the seeds in. So this one's got a lot of air in already. Just going to squeeze a little bit of that out. So learn from your mistakes, label before. So here we're going to do the runner bean. Label open and closed. I always close it for some reason. So for the runner bean, damp moist compost in the bottom. Tap it down just so it's level and you know it's into all the corners. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm just going to start off 12 plants. Space them out roughly, so not all in one corner. Less likely to get tangled up if that's the case. I'm just going to cover them up with a bit of compost. And I'm going to get most of the air out of the bag, but not all of it, and I'm going to close it. I'm just going to leave it a little bit open on there. Now I move on to the broad bean, turn it over so I'm writing on the right side so I can see the word date. Variety is Meteor, which is written on the packet, and it's a broad bean, so I know roughly how to, there's my dyslexia coming out. I'll get it going. The good thing with broad beans, it's only pretty much July and August, you don't sow them. So these are things you can sow all year round, except for July, August. You can even sow them in winter. They'll be slower growing, but they're fabulous. So we're just going to put the rest of the nice compost in. Just going to get a little bit more from my bag. It's not quite enough in there. So I've tapped my mix down. I've got my broad beans. Just going to cover them with a bit more moist compost. Again, this is only to keep the moisture around the seed. It's not to plant them as such. And I'll close them up, almost complete. Cut it out a little bit. And I'll leave that again for another 7 to 10 days. Now, some people, once they start seeing shooting and sprouting, they might pop them on. But another technique that I was shown from the old boys down the allotments, good old Trevor, he used to be site secretary, he told me, in fact, he wouldn't just pot them on as soon as he saw sprouting. What he would do is leave them till he had it over his first or even his second set of leaves on there. And his containers or his bags would be fully overgrown with plants. And you're thinking, well, that might be doing him some damage. But what he knew, he's going to beat the animals and the pests and the other things that might come along and take the young plants. So he was growing them more on inside the bag, just making sure he kept the moisture up and didn't let them rot, and let the air flow every now and again so he didn't get too moist and have any damage or fungus or bacteria attacking the leaves. So another method with peas, runner beans and broad beans is to plant them directly into their own pot to get them going, and either plant that pot out, or when they are fully established, then to take the pot off or take them out of the pot and plant them in the ground. Now, all of these like to form a big taproot going into the ground, and so it doesn't normally like to be disturbed. You can get away with it, but it will make the plant struggle and it will have time to recover. Now, some plants don't recover. So one way of great recycling is to use a kitchen roll tube or a toilet tube. A toilet roll tube works really well. And for a kitchen roll one, I'm going to do a runner bean and I'm going to do a broad bean. So I can demonstrate like this. Now, you've got two schools of thought. You put soil in this and you compact it down, it should hold. But for some people, they might forget and therefore it come out the bottom. But what I like to do is to do it hollow and fill it with soil. But you could, if you wanted, just fold in the bottom parts out there to form a base on it, so when you're carrying it around, you don't forget. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this up now. Put my hand at the bottom to start that. Put the compost in. Just going to squish it down at the bottom. So the compost in. I've filled that compost nice and tight, just up to the first bend in my thumb. Now that's a good rule of thumb. The reason it is like that is because you take a seed such as a runner bean and you think of it sideways. What you might do is either plant most seeds between 2 of a size. If you had 4 of these side by side, you'll notice it goes up to about the joint of my thumb. So you plant most seeds between 2 and 4 of the thickness of the seed into the soil. So for runner bean, I'm just going to plant it into the soil. And I'm just going to cover it up. This time I'm not pushing the compost down, I'm leaving it loose on top. I'll do the same for the broad bean. You see this, the eye of the broad bean, this is where the roots are going to come down and the shoots are going to come up. So I'm going to put it in. You might find the roots come out that and it turns around. So we're going to go in sideways, loosely fill the top above it. Now as the seed starts sprouting, you might find it pushes some of that compost out. Just like with the bags, it's good to label it. So best to do this in a pencil. Some people use this method for growing their beans anyway in a professional sense. What they might be doing is they would use root trainer cells, which basically are containers all in a line this sort of depth, 4 to 6 inches in length. So you're looking between 10 and 15 centimeters in depth. They would fill them up with compost, put the seed in, and watch them grow. And then when they wanted to have the seed ready, they would open it up, and it would be like opening up an envelope. There'd be 2 sides. They'd be able to take out the roots and stuff. So this is a way of just mimicking it from at home in a cheaper sense. So you're reusing toilet rolls or kitchen roll tubes. Obviously this method takes up more space, but it's more individual, and so they don't have to handle the plants as much. The ones in the bags, they take up, the more seed can be contained within a small amount of space, and you know which seed is viable before you pot it on. So they have their merits. I like both methods depending on what resources I have what time I have, and space on the windowsill. Obviously the other method would be to go outside and plant the seeds directly in the soil. It's warming up this time of year now, so we could get away with doing that. The only risks you have for planting directly in soil is that as the shoots come out, A lot of birds are creating nests and having their youngs. So what you notice is they will come down and they will take the tops off the plants. So you might have to net or protect your plants as they come up. Now I'll show you some methods in other videos of how to do that. If I haven't got time, then what I'll do is I'll link you into a few other people's videos where they've been showing you how to do that. The other risks you have, things like rodents, particularly fond of peas and broad bean seeds as they're sprouting out. So you might find that they come in and they dig up those seeds, and where you thought you had a line of peas, you'll suddenly find you had no peas growing. You'll think it's a seed, but actually what you might find is that if you dug down, you might find there was no seed left, and it was actually the rodents who had come in and eaten it. So this is why some people start their peas and their beans and stuff at home, especially if they're on allotment, because they're not there to look after it all the time. And it just gives you a starter for 10. But if you're short on space, you can plant them directly in the soil. All I suggest is you plant more than one seed in every hole, just in case one of them fails or gets eaten, you have another one. Now these are one of my favourite things to grow, because I absolutely love eating these. The broad beans I'd eat fresh off the plant, same as the peas. They very rarely make it into the house. I just love having a munch of the peas in the garden. And also runner beans are a great return on investment. If you plant a runner bean plant, or if you plant 10, you're going to have more runner beans than you could possibly eat. It's a great way of meeting your neighbours, either sharing them with them. Some people have even managed to sell them in their local churches or to friends and family. You know, it's just over £1 a kilo, maybe up to £1.50 a kilo for those runner beans, and it can help you then with that little bit of money coming back, buy your seed for next year or buy your other seed for next year. It's just a fantastic way of doing it. But right now you might want to be growing these on again for the food banks. You might want to help out those people who are having a bit of trouble getting fresh vegetables. Runner beans is a great way. So if you plant them on next to the pavement by your house and you put a sign up saying please help yourself to some runner beans as you walk by, it'd be a great way of helping out your community. Those fences that you might have, school fences, are a fantastic way. Again, they're good support for the runner beans. And again, if you put a sign up saying please help yourself during those summer holidays and sort of harvest time, people will be able to harvest those runner beans from outside that fence without entering property, and make sure that they're feeding their families some fresh produce. And they're a great flavour. And the other great thing about these is you can save your own seed from the plants. So I do love these plants in many, many ways.
Hi guys, it's Sam here from Egg Seeds, and I thought I'd give you a quick update on the freezer bag technique and the sprouting technique. So we put some water in here, and we put broad beans, runner beans and peas and some French beans. Just soaked them, tipped the water out after day 1, and then left them in here, keeping them moist every day with a little rinse, and then pour it out. And what we can see is that all of them have sprouted, all except the old French beans, which we weren't sure about. So the new French beans have all sprouted fine, but the old ones haven't. But what we've got is all of them have sprouted, and they're still very small that I could pot these on. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to pot these on and give them away in the community. The freezer bag technique, where we basically put the seeds inside some moist compost and then sealed the bag, we've had 100% germination on both types of peas. So this one was the packet pea, this pea seed that we bought from the supermarket. And this one was the Leo's dried peas from the cupboard. And look at them, they're doing even better. So I'm going to pot these on and get ready to give these away. Hi guys, it's Sam here from Egg Seeds. I've got a few quick updates for you. So remember I was sowing the peas and the beans and the broad beans, French beans. So here's the old seed of climbing French bean. And I've got very poor germination. Now this seed is 3-4 years old, so it does say normally 2 to 3 years you can keep the seed for. This one is, as I say, 4 years old, most likely, and what I've got is probably 1/6 of those seeds have germinated and the rest of them have just rotted. So I'll pop them ones on, but in the meantime, and that was done on the 24th, I sowed some just a week later, beginning of May, of a bush French bean, and already I've got fantastic germination. Every seed that I've put in there is germinated. Again, another bush French bean, beginning of May. These have germinated really well using the freezer bag technique. So it's a technique that I'll use again and again and again. A lot easier to manage than using a sprouting jar, which needed a constant re-soaking and re-washing. So I recommend it, anyone who wants to try something a little bit easier, the freezer bag technique is a really good way of starting those pulses. Anything like that will get going like that. The broad beans, which have been in since the 24th, they've been a bit slower than the runner beans and the peas, but they are there now. So what I'll be doing is I'll be taking these into the garden and planting these in the square metre garden, just so I've got myself enough broad beans for the season. Now the bush French beans, I'm only going to need a couple for myself. The rest I'm going to pot on out for the community and probably plant down in the local health centre. So you can see some good healthy growth in them. You see where the seed was inside this and how it's shed, and it's even formed its really first set of true leaves. That's just phenomenal germination rate. That's a fantastic method. If I'm going to pot them on, you put them on in their individual pot. I've got lots of these. Let's get myself a good bit of compost from the bottom of it. I'll use the leaves. Just going to wiggle these apart. I'm gently prising them apart using each other, just because it's less likely to cause damage to the roots. I'm going to place that in. I'm just going to fit around it. Don't mind burying the stem a little bit on these, because they're still just fresh stems. There I'd have it. I'd put this probably in my cold frame and give it a good water. Probably I put it on a tray so I can water from underneath, because these bags have holes in underneath. But I'll pot on all of these and then just keep myself a few from each bag just for the garden. Hi guys, it's Sam from Egg Seeds. I'm here to update the square metre garden with some seeds that I've pre-soaked inside. So I've got myself some runner bean seeds and some broad beans. I'm going to put some broad beans along the edge here and some runner beans along this side and the other side. Now this side I'm going to plant directly into the soil. This side I'm going to sprout them indoors and see if that plays any difference to the speed in which the plant grows. So I'm going to get on and start making holes in here. So I've only made 3 holes in each gap. That's because I need space in between to put sticks, and it gives me a chance, if any of these do not grow, then I can then also put in some spare plants. Now the sprout and the root are going to come out of here. It's going to come out, root will go down, sprout will go up. Now how deep to sow them? I would put them 4 times the thickness of the seed, which would show you it would be up to my knuckle or my thumb. So I use my thumb to make sure the holes that I've marked out are deep enough. And now I'm going to do the same for the broad beans. Here I'm going to do only 2. So I'm going to split this little gap. It's not much space for their roots. 1 there and 1 in there. The broad bean is like the runner bean, except the eye is on the end of it, not on the middle. And the root's going to come down, the shoot's going to go up. The depth again is about the same as it is for a runner bean. I've just brought the compost back in over the holes, and now I'll give them a good water tonight. I should expect to see something within a couple of weeks of them sprouting out, maybe 7 to 10 days. I might be lucky. It might take 2 weeks for it to break the surface of the soil. Hi guys, it's Sam here from Egg Seeds, and today I'm going to be planting on the runner beans that we sowed inside using the freezer bag technique. And if you have a look inside, you can see it's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's been over 90% germination rate. So what we're going to do is we're going to plant them in the square foot garden. We're going to put 9 across 3 squares, so that's 3 in each square. Then I'll have room to put the sticks in on each side. First up, water.
While we're watering, just to note that the seeds were started at the same time as the soaked ones, and the ones in the freezer bags are up and about 10 to 15 centimeters length, but the ones that were put directly into the ground are still not showing their faces. This may be due to the exceptionally hot weather that's been drying out the ground, but we hope to see these pop up in the next couple of weeks.
So there's the last one that hasn't yet fully grown. So holding by the leaves, in the raised bed we've built a nice rustic trellis with some twine coming down. We've got some broad beans in the back. Along this side, next to every stick or string, we've got ourselves a runner bean. As we move past the front again where we saw the broad beans, next to the parsley running down along the wall by all the strings, we've got ourselves some runner beans. A few of them have been a bit slow growing, but we've checked the seed and they're still sprouting, they just haven't come up yet.